Hello, everyone. Today I'll cover the Codebase section of the 12-factor app. I will be doing a step-by-step walkthrough of the document that can be found at 12factor.net. I posted the link in the description, so you should be able to follow along if you have the document open. One of the things they're saying in this Codebase section is they're saying one code tracked in revision control, many deploys. They're saying a 12-factor app. They're saying a 12-factor app is always tracked in a version control system such as Git, Mercurial, or Subversion. So if you call your app a 12-factor app, it should be tracked in a version control system, is what they're saying. A copy of the revision tracking database is known as a code repository, often shortened to code repo or just repo. So a copy of the version tracking database, basically whatever code you have in this version tracking database is called either a code repository or code repo or a repo. A code base is any single repo or any set of repos who share a root commit. So they're saying a code base is any single repository or any set of repositories who share a root commit. So I'm pretty familiar with Git. So in Git, it's a decentralized revision control system. Basically, all developers have a copy of the revisions on their local desktops typically. So it's decentralized. They can do commits locally, and then when they're ready to merge their changes, they push their changes to the central repository. But that's the code base. I mean, the database that has all the revisions of the code is in a single repo, and that's called the code base. There is always a one-to-one correlation between the code base and the app. So they're saying if you develop an app, it should have one code base. Your app cannot be split into multiple repos, is what I'm getting from there. So in the next sentence, they say if there are multiple code bases, it's not an app. It's a distributed system. Yeah. So if you created an app and that app has app's code resides in, let's say, code repo called person and code repo called address and stuff like that, then it's not an app. I mean, so each code repository should be in its own. Each app should have its own code repository, is what they're saying. So let's see, you create a person code repository, then the person app should have a one-to-one relationship between the person code repository and the person app, for example. Each component in a distributed system is an app and can individually comply with 12-factor. So basically they're saying, let's say you have a person app and a person repository. The person app should adhere to the 12-factor app. Each one can be its own 12-factor app, is what they're saying. Multiple apps sharing the same code is a violation of 12-factor app. So multiple apps cannot share the same code. So the solution here is to factor shared code into libraries, which can be included through the dependency manager. The solution here is to factor shared code into libraries. Basically, if you have shared code between apps, put them in a library is what they're saying, which makes sense. So a library itself is an app or a 12-factor app for all we care. So the library can be its own repository, and then the apps that are sharing the library use the library itself, and they don't share any code. So there is only one code base per app, but there will be many deploys of the app. So like in this case, if there is a person app and there is a person code repository, the person app can be deployed to production, staging. This diagram shows that production, staging, or the developers who are developing this person app, or let's say this Hello World app, for example, developers can have multiple copies of the app. I mean, developers can have their own copy, but they all these copies belong to the same code base. And basically, that's what they mean by deploying. So you can either deploy to production or deploy to staging or or to developer one or developer two. A deploy is a running instance of the app. A deploy is nothing but a running instance of the app. So this is typically a production site and one or more staging sites. So yeah, so they're saying a deploy is a running instance. So once you develop a product, like let's say you developed a Hello World app or a person app, you deploy it to either production or staging. Basically, it's the running instance of the code. Additionally, every developer has a copy of the app running in their local development environment, each of which also qualifies as a deploy. So every developer has the code base also locally available, so they can modify it and run it. So they do a deployment locally also. The code base is the same across all deploys, although different versions may be active in each deploy. The code base is the same. The code base is the same across all deploys, although different versions may be active in each deploy. For example, a developer has some commits. So let me read this sentence again. It says the code base is the same across all deploys, although different versions may be active in each deploy. Yeah, basically the production version, you want to push something to production only if it's already staged and it is tested. It goes through a suite of integration tests, and then only you deploy it, move it to production. So the version that is in staging will always be ahead of the version that is in production. Not only that, a developer is making a bunch of changes. The developer always has, because they're developing is they'll have newer versions of the code than what is out in staging. Once they're done testing locally, they'll push it to the staging environment. So that's what they're saying. So everyone has different versions. So the deployed code will have different versions. So for example, they give an example. They say, for example, a developer has commits not yet deployed to staging. Yeah, staging has some commits not deployed to production, but they all share the same code base, thus making them identifiable as different deploys of the same app. Okay. So this is the next section. I'll stop the video for now, and then I'll start another one for dependencies.